Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Power Women in Insurance podcast. And I have a new friend of mine who has really captured my soul, has captured such a beautiful journey in the insurance space, filled with such joy, advocacy, and really standing up for women across the world, across the United States, across the industry. And I am super excited to be able to bring her on the podcast today so you can get to know her and love her as much as I do. So, Kaleigha, welcome to the podcast.
It's so good to be here, and I'm pumped that I actually got to meet you in real life before I got to be on here. So that
Well,
was
I was
that was super
excited because
fun.
I reached out like right before the conference. We went to Insurance Soup Live and you were speaking, and I was so excited to see you. But then it was like you were just surrounded by people because you're so dynamic and so beautiful on stage. And it was so funny. I was like, hey, I don't mean to bother you, but hi, we're supposed to talk at some point. It was so funny. And I was like, and we were like, oh, and then things settled down. So we got to connect a little bit more. So, but you did such a great job on
Thank
stage at
you.
Soup Live, and it was such a great event. So thank you for sharing your heart up there. I mean, I know that took a lot of courage and guts because speaking on the stage is scary, period. But you were
Yeah.
just super real and honest, and you really brought your heart and your soul to it. So thank you so much for what you give.
Yeah, and it was so funny because everybody had asked my husband, he was there. They were like, "She must have rehearsed for days and weeks and months." And I found out about 8 months before the actual event that I was going to be speaking, and I'm a procrastinator girl. That, it's just part of it. And I started practicing like that week. And I made my slideshow or whatever, started practicing, and everybody was like, "She must have just worked so hard." And he said, "Girl, everything she said on stage wasn't a thing that came out of her mouth when she was practicing." So, it was a God thing to me. It was like, the
Yeah.
things that needed to be said were said, so it worked out well.
I agree. I agree. I think sometimes we need to do that. We need to kind of go with the flow. We need to go with what's needed in the moment and what we're called to be able to do. Because I know,
Mhm.
actually, I was on the stage at one point in San Diego back a couple years back, and I made some comment. I don't. It was some joke or whatever. It's totally off the fly. Nothing I've ever said to anyone else in my entire life. I don't even remember saying it. And I think I said something like, "We need to make sure we compliment our clients and we tell them we appreciate them, right?"
Mhm.
And I think what I said was, because if you tell me you love my shirt, I'm going to be wearing this shirt every darn day. So therefore, you want to make sure that you tell people that they look great. I really like your shirt. I try to give at least 5 compliments per day to random strangers, just a attitude of gratitude, right? So then I'm walking around the conference and like random people walked up to me like, "I really like your shirt." I was like, "Thanks. Oh my gosh, this shirt is awesome." But I had no idea that I had actually said it because I was so in the moment.
You are, yeah.
And it was so funny because I mentioned later, I was like, "Man, this shirt is getting a lot of compliments." And they were like, "That's from your talk, right?" I go, "What do you mean?" And they're like, "Because you said that, if you give your team member or a client a compliment, they're going to remember
Mhm.
it. Because if you tell
Oh,
me
yeah.
you like my shirt, I'm going to wear this shirt every darn day." And I just went, I did say that, didn't I? It was
You were
so
just
funny that
feeling
it took me
yourself.
like 4 hours to figure out why in the world everybody liked my shirt.
Yeah, and you were just walking around like, "This was last minute pick. I was feeling myself that day."
Exactly.
I love it. That's awesome.
Exactly. But you did such a great job. And you are from Coleman, Alabama. So
Yes.
I love that. And I know that you live right down the street from, big shout out, my good friend Bree, who works with us over at the Sterling Insurance Group. She's also out there in Alabama.
I
So
love
I am
her.
super excited. I know that she just looks up to you, and I know what you have helped her mentally and emotionally feel so comfortable with, just with the concept of the daily lifestyle that like we all live as women and so forth. So I want to make sure that everybody else gets to know you too. So I'm really excited.
Awesome.
So let's start off. Tell me about how you got in the insurance industry a little bit, and a little bit about your journey to get here.
Okay. So I'll start with the insurance and then I'll kind of give you a life backstory. So I was in college to be a teacher. Home ec teacher. Is that not the most southern thing ever? Because of course I love to garden and I love to cook and I love to do all those things. But and I hate to say this, my husband gets on to me all the time. He's like, "You can't say that to people." I don't like kids. Like I like my kids and I like my friends' kids, but I just don't want to be around kids all day. And I was in college and I was working at a cell phone company and I was doing sales and I loved it. And I noticed that I was really good at it, and not for technology reasons, not because I was savvy with stuff like that. I just love to talk to people. Like, I love, like you and I were talking about before, like I love to hear people's stories and
Mhm.
all of that. And that really, I think bled through what I was doing in sales. So I had met a lady who worked for State Farm, and she came in and she recruited me to work for State Farm, and I put in my notice. And the same week, I had a friend of mine that I'd known forever who was opening an Allstate agency, and he was like, "Listen, I want you to come work for me. So, don't go work for the State Farm lady. Come work for me." This was 12, 13 years ago. Yeah, almost 13 years ago. And when he and I were talking about everything, he was like, at that time, Allstate was super lucrative. And he was like, "We got all this stuff, honoring and all this. Like, I want you to be a part of this." So I just went in head first, and I started as an LSP. I know you've got Allstate background, so you're aware of that. So I was an LSP, and we were one of the only Allstate agencies in Alabama that was trained through Connexus to do Connexus is so much fun um, to do commercial. So that's kind of what I did. I ended up being an associate agent for him. Worked for him for 6 years. Love him still to this day. He's one of my clients. We're friends, and I was just like, I want to do something more. Like, what else do I want to do? And the thing that hurt me the most with Allstate is when I would lose a customer.
Mm,
And when you're in a captive setting, and that works out great for some people. I'm in this business for relationships, and I still to this day, some of my greatest friends that I have are people who gave me a chance on a renter's insurance policy when I was 21 years old, and then it formed. I've watched it turn into auto insurance, and then into then buying a house, and then buying rental properties. So that's kind of how I got in the industry. And then I in 2021 I decided, what, I want to do my own thing. And mainly because I felt like I wanted this to me, it's always been a servant role. And I
mhm.
knew that I could serve better in an independent role without restrictions and with more to give to clients.
Yeah.
So in 2021, I opened my agency, 212 Insurance Group. And first of all, I did 212 because my name is ridiculous. And I was like, I'm not putting my name on this. It's too much. So 212 comes from the theory 212 or 211 degrees water is hot, and at 212 it boils. And I actually learned that in
Interesting.
a marketing meeting when I worked at the cell phone company. So I was sitting there and I was like, you know what, this is it. Like, I want to give in the extra degree. So that's my
Mm,
tagline with my agency, is providing the extra degree of service. So that's, kind of what got me to where we were today. And we've grown really well. The market right now is just ridiculous. And
right.
we've grown. I have a great staff. They all women staff. They all work from home. I'm the one that primarily works in the agency because I love my customers. I love seeing them face to face. And when they come in the office, they want to see me. So that's kind of where we are now. We're growing. We focus on we do personal lines, but my personal niches were chicken houses, churches, and trailer parks. That was
What?
a big hit at Soup
I
Live.
just
Everybody
love
thought it was
that.
hilarious. But, my thing was this, like, I'm in rural Alabama. Like, I got to go for what people have. And most insurance agencies don't want to mess with those things. But, that's what brought me here. And, going back to what you and I had just prefaced a little bit, that that's how I got into insurance. But my mom, my mom got pregnant when she was in high school. My mom and dad were young. They got married. They did not need to get married, which is not a big deal. Some people just are not meant to be together, and they trucked it out. They tried. But my mom was a single mom, and she built a huge catering company, and it all came from when we were young. We were super poor. We came home to a single wide trailer. She cleaned houses, and then we would get invited to birthday parties, and we couldn't afford to give gifts. So she would make their birthday cake as a gift, like whatever. And just like a funny little side story, one of our friends had wanted a Stone Cold Steve Austin cake,
Uh-huh.
and
My
she
husband would
made
love
it.
that.
Oh my gosh, it was the grandest thing back then. She'd go and get these like sugar sheets made with like his thing on it. Well, my mom was very naive. When she was young, she was very naive, and she had wrote SOB all over it because it was on the thing and she didn't know what it meant. So she showed up at this party with this Stone Cold Steve Austin cake that said SOB all over it. It was
That is
hilarious.
hilarious.
Yes, and so and then that turned into, doing baby showers and wedding showers, which turned into doing wedding events, big weddings, corporate events, and she even catered for Tommy Tuberville, who was
Wow.
Auburn War Eagle, their
Uh-huh.
football coach, and then he's a senator now. So, she, I had her to look up to in that sense as far as work ethic and in doing what you need to do to get by. And there was a lot of that came with that, with having young parents and divorced parents. There was some childhood trauma there. And I didn't really kind of see that until I had my own child and I was older. And, that's kind of the journey that led into it is I wanted a career to where I could serve other people,
Mm,
because that's what that fulfilled me when I was
yeah.
dealing with other illness, like mental illnesses that I couldn't put my finger on, if that made sense.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that gives you a little backstory
I love
about
that
life.
though. And I think a
Yeah.
lot of people fall into insurance, like you mentioned, like they get somebody who pops in on them wherever they work or like a relationship they have or their uncle or their aunt or something like that. Like, oh, you'd be really good for insurance. Um, I know a good friend of mine, Lisa Engel, another shout out with up at Willowwood Insurance up in Minneapolis, Minnesota, or up north of there. But anyway, she ran into one of her daughter's friends. Her daughter's an adult, and ran into one of her daughter's friends at like a coffee shop. And she was like, "Oh my gosh!" and started talking to her. And she's like, "You would be so amazing in the insurance industry." And she's hired her, and she's
Yeah.
brought her in. And I love that. That's how so many parts of insurance and people getting into the industry, so many people get in that way. I know that not everybody stays that way, but at the same point, it's such a great, easy, like cultivating experience when you come in because somebody knows that you're going to be really good at it, right? And they see
It makes you
something in you.
feel it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I had a meeting yesterday with a guy that so part of one of the cool things that I get to do with my agency is I have a scholarship program, and it's called the Extra Degree, and, we're a huge football town, and it's during football season, so I do it for, one student that just is, leading the student body, a cheerleader, a football player, and a band member every single week, and this student had gotten one of he was band member of the week, and then I don't choose those weekly, but I do choose the scholarship recipients,
Right.
and he is just such a dynamic leader. Like you would see him before band, like before they would perform on Friday nights, helping his mom stock the concession stand, and putting together a Veterans Day program and all this stuff. Just a good kid, and he got one of my scholarships and found out he was going into business. And I was like, come talk to me about insurance, because he's so mature, and just, I was like, you would be so great. So I'm like, like, it gives an opportunity, like, to kids like me, like, I went to school for 5 years. I didn't graduate. I was dealing with all these, things like before my bipolar diagnosis in my head, didn't know what was going on. And I tried to self-soothe that with drinking and doing other things. And, there's a lot of industries that you can't just step out of that into to get that to where
Yep.
you are. And that's been a huge thing with my agency is I'm open about that. Actually today on my memories was I had made a post on Facebook, and I had said it was a thing that I'd put on the door. Normally I would put, I was going to lunch because I go to therapy once a week, every week. And I finally put, why do I have to say that I'm going to lunch? Like, why can't I
Right.
be open and honest that I'm going to therapy? Like, it's okay. Like, why do we have to hide that? And insurance is an industry where you can be you, and you being you is what's going to help you be successful.
Yes. Yes, I
I
love
love
that.
that.
So let's talk about a little bit of that journey because I know that one of the things, and I'm going to say people struggle with, but especially women, I think,
Mhm.
is especially in today's day and age with Instagram and Facebook and all the imagery stuff. And I know that's always been there. It's always been there. I mean, if we look back in time, right? You had your pinup girls, your Betty Grable, your
Mhm.
back in the day, right? You had your Farrah Fawcett when I was a kid, right? You walked into the, Spencer's Gifts, whatever, and you had your posters in the back, right? And you had your ideal of these beautiful, amazing women on Dynasty when I was a kid, or whatever it was. And I think that we as women and as men too have images in our head of who we're supposed to be. And I think that most of our adult life is revolving around finding that and trying to be that with still accomplishing all the things that the world wants us to accomplish or what we think the world wants us to accomplish, and somehow finding or dreaming that there may be some sort of balance between those, and that by doing both, by being our radical self as well as being radically who culture and society or whatever tells us to be, that somehow we're still going to be happy in that space. And I think a lot of people are waking up and realizing that that's really not possible. We can't be
Yeah.
leave it to beaver and you know um whatever rock star traveling the world all at the same time, that we have to find different ways to balance, but that starts with being honest with ourselves and
Mhm.
getting the truth in our spirit about who we are, what we are, and where we've been and where we're going, what we truly want. And that's a journey, and that's
It
hard.
is. It is very hard, and, going back to what I mentioned earlier, there were a lot of things in my childhood, that with my parents and with my family, I don't know if you've ever heard do you know who JD Vance is?
No, I don't think I do.
He so he's an attorney, and he actually I can't remember if he's a senator or congressman, but he wrote the book, Hillbilly Elegy, and it's so beautiful and it's so inspiring because he came from a background like I did, where you have this constant life of whatever anybody's story is, like, a lot of people come from drugs, a lot of people come from abuse, different things. His story was similar from mine because it was just a generational curse of communication, is what I like to call it,
Yeah.
because my family communicated in drama. That is the easiest way to say it. Like, we're gonna
Yep.
have a blow up, but then we're gonna be nice to each other. And, I suffered with that for a long time, because I've always been a very empathetic person. I'm very outgoing now, but when I was younger, I was very timid. But, my family, and I love them to death. I love my family. But it became a situation to where I saw, okay, this is not healthy. And I saw myself turning to coping mechanisms that were not healthy for me. Like I said, drinking was one. Different. Depending on different relationships. Taking the relationships with men, and seeing that's in my worth, or if somebody likes me, that's in my worth, different things like that, that I think a lot of women and even some men probably struggle with. And I decided, when I found out I was pregnant, it was a shock. I was married, but, I'd never wanted to have children. It's just I wanted to be Carrie Bradshaw. That's what I wanted to be. I didn't know
Yep.
what I wanted to
Yep.
do, but I wanted to be Carrie Bradshaw. So I found out I was pregnant, and the moment that I heard his heartbeat, I fell in love, and I said, "You know what? I'm gonna do better." And after he was born, I had horrible postpartum depression.
Yep.
And, that if you or any other women have suffered with that, it's rough.
Yep.
I isolated myself really bad, and that was in 2014. And I kept going to the doctor, and I had a male doctor at the time, and I was like, "Listen, I'm just tired. I'm worn out. Something's going on with me. Like, I don't know what it is." And he just said, "You're a mom, you're in insurance, like, you're in sales, like, it's just you're worn out." And girl, I'm gonna tell you, I took every medicine, Wellbutrin, Lexapro, Zoloft, Paxil, everything that you could think of, and everything. And I was like, this is not right. And I remember in 2019, my aunt pulled me aside, and she was like, she is diagnosed with bipolar as well. And she was like, "You have something else going on. Like, I think you might have a bipolar diagnosis," because it was always a thing to where I would have these lows, but I was putting on a front. And I think a lot of women do that.
Yeah.
We have
Yeah.
to be tough, not for just us, but for our children. And there's been so many times, and I'm sure you understand this, and most women will, where I've gone to the back and squalled my eyes out and cleaned my mascara up and come back with a smile on, because
Yep.
that's what we're indoctrinated to do. We're supposed to be strong. And, my mom had to be strong. So she didn't know how
Mhm.
to cope with her own issues. So I mimicked what she went through and what my grandmother, like, we're just going to be tough. We're going to tough it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, finally in 2020, I got my bipolar diagnosis, and had to wean off of medicine, went through bipolar psychosis, and had a suicide,
Mm.
not really a suicide attempt, but, during bipolar psychosis, you go through hallucinations and things. And I really was like, I'm going to get help, and went through with my psychiatrist, and, got on a plan, went through therapy. And it really opens up your eyes to see, like, okay, this is what I have, but it's not who I am. So how am I gonna deal with this on a
Mhm.
daily basis?
Yep.
And how am I gonna get healthy for not only me, but for my son? And this craziest thing, because I was diagnosed in July of 2020, and I opened my agency in July of 21. And,
Wow.
a lot of people say that, because I'm like, I look back now, and I'm like, it was a motivator for me, because I've for so long been trying to
Mm.
cope, in unhealthy ways. And I finally was like, okay, something was wrong. this is what we're going to do and we're going to deal with it. And then shortly after that, I started sharing my story because I'm like, how many other people
Mhm.
are dealing with this? And
Yep.
girl, you would not believe the people that reach out and they're like, I've been struggling too. And
Well,
that's
there's
why I'm here with it.
there's like a shame around it that I think our culture has
There is.
said that if you have a mental or a challenge in that way, that
Hmm.
somehow there's something wrong with us, and it's not. It's just our bodies, our brains, our chemicals just need to be maybe monitored a different way. It doesn't mean there's something. We have to take that what's the word I'm looking for, that verbiage, that story, we
Hmm.
have to take that judgment out of our vernacular, because we have to change the conversation.
Yes.
And
A
I love
hundred
that you're
percent.
doing that, because I think by being really open and bringing awareness to it is the beginning to be able to start the conversation, so people can say, hey, this person down the street for me, hey, my mom, my dad, right? We think about all these adults around us, and we think that they don't have any problems. We think that, they're perfect, right? We see their Instagram, their Facebook, whatever, and we see their career. We see them. We don't see all the stuff that doesn't work, all the things behind the scenes, the areas where maybe they go home and they drink too much, or they
Hmm.
exercise too much, or I mean, exercise is a really good thing, but it can become unhealthy, right? There's
Yes.
anything, eating, right? I mean, I would be the type of person, and I still can be, who would lock myself in the pantry and just eat everything I can find, because we all have some of those coping mechanisms, but they need to be
Hmm.
healthy. They don't need to be unhealthy. And without conversation, they become very unhealthy very easily.
And that is such a profound thing that you said. And that was one of the biggest things with my diagnosis that really, really like changed my mindset is because we always think of addicts as people who are sex addicts or drug addicts or are alcoholics, but we can be addicted to anything. Like you're saying, you could have people who are addicted to the internet, people who are addicted to exercising, eating, even work. And that was a big thing with I want to say identity crisis is, what am I going to do? Where am I going to find my
Yeah.
value? And Michael McCormick and I had a really good conversation right after I opened my agency because I grew really quickly and I got thrown into doing a lot of meetings with people and, talking with people and being on these boards of, different things. And it was always really weird for me because I was so much younger than a lot of the people in there
Mm,
and I didn't feel like I was worth. I was like, I don't need to be here. I haven't been doing this as long as most people have. Look at my background, look at where I was at. And I was trying to find my worth in my sales and my numbers.
yeah.
And, once I figured out, okay, this is unhealthy. This is not what I don't need to be comparing myself to all these people. I mean,
Yeah.
because I know as well as anybody else. When I was on the Soup Live stage, that was one of the first things I said is I'm not going to teach you about automation. I'm not going to teach you how to sell or any of those things. I'm going to teach you how to put yourself first and give yourself grace because you can't run a business. You can't be, a mom. You can't be a wife. You can't do all those things without pouring into yourself because that's what
Mhm.
women, in general are so indoctrinated to do is to give and give and give and pour out. And, I look up so much to these women that are stay-at-home moms and that wanna be in their homestead all the time, like, I love that for them. I could not do it. When my kid was home with me during COVID, I was like, "No," like, s
Yeah.
I get we were iced in Alabama for, a week back in January, and, my office is only a mile away, and I was like, "I'm going to hike to my office because I can't be in this house
I will
anymore."
crawl my way if I have
I
to.
will go put anything put all the warm on me, I'll do that, but that was the
Yep.
whole thing is I didn't want my identity to be that I'm bipolar. I didn't want my identity to be that I'm an insurance agent or I'm a mom or I'm this. I wanted it to be I'm who I am and these are
Mm,
the things that I love and these are the things that I want to do with my life. These are my goals and my aspirations and how am I going to get there in a healthy way. And I really had to stop last year like my production went down and I really beat myself up over it. But really, the last year was when I really developed a more healthy way of dealing with the day to day, routines. And, I still have my issues. I have ADHD also. I'm a terrible procrastinator. If you saw everything behind me right now, it's a mess. There's like
Yep.
8 loads of laundry.
I get it.
Um, but, that's part of it, and, for the longest time, like, people would say something like that, they were like, "We just thought you had it together," even in school. They'd be like,
Mhm.
"We thought you had it together," but people didn't know what was going on behind closed doors, and they didn't know what was I mean, I remember being in the 2nd grade in my family, I was the only kid that had divorced parents. I mean, I'm in rural Baptist Alabama, like,
Mhm.
that was weird, but I look back now and I'm like, that didn't define who I was, and I
Yep.
have to figure out who I am now, and I'm finally in a place now to where I'm secure in who I am, and I'm unapologetically who I am, but, and I think a lot of too back to going back what we were talking about with society, we use that as an excuse sometimes to, be in people's faces and be loud and to be ugly, and you don't have to do that either. Just be you and enjoy your life, man. Like,
Yeah.
have fun in what you're doing. If you hate insurance, if you're listening to this podcast right now and you're like, "Dang, I hate insurance," go do something
Get
else.
out. Don't be
Get
here.
out.
Or try
I
or
love
find something
yeah.
else in insurance. Maybe that's
Yeah.
just not your role in the industry, right? I mean,
Yeah.
there's lots of different ways to do what it is that we do, right? I mean, and maybe I don't need to be in service. Maybe I need to be in, finances, or maybe I need to transfer over to commercial insurance and not personal insurance, or vice versa. I mean,
Mhm.
or go into group health or Medicare or whatever. Do something different if you want to stay in the industry, or do something else in a different industry. I mean,
Yep.
there's so many different parts of this world for so many different people. Hopefully we can find our space and
Yep.
be emotionally and physically happy.
Yes. And that's a huge thing that I talked to my therapist about this week is I feel like in the world, we chase the next best thing, especially now. And I feel so bad for our younger generation, like minding your kids' age level, because it's almost like they try so much because they have so much to deal with social media. And,
Yeah.
we deal with that as, grown-ups and adults and as, business owners, but the kids have it way worse. And, they're constantly attached. I mean, I was mowing my yard yesterday and had my phone in my shirt because I was listening to Dateline. And I was thinking, my grandma would like what did she do back when she mowed the yard back in the day? Because she didn't have a phone to keep on her, and I think, we're so attached to all this, and it's penetrating our minds, and it's
Yep.
poisoning our minds, and,
Yep.
we chase this joy, we think if we get this, if we do this next thing, we're gonna be happy and whatever, and I talked to my therapist about this week, and I was like, I'm at the point in my life, I don't even wanna be happy, I wanna be content. I wanna
Mm,
wake up, and I wanna go look at my dang soybeans in my front yard and my creek in my backyard and just feel at peace and at
yeah.
ease and
I think
not
that's
panic.
different. People get confused about what happiness is versus peace. We think
Yeah,
happiness is being on a yacht somewhere in the middle of the Caribbean on vacation or whatever, right? And then we come back to our miserable lives. But I think
yeah,
being able to find peace is a totally different conversation, and it's so much more um worth it. It's
it
so
is.
much more important than happiness.
It is. And, our pace is all gonna be different. Like,
Mhm.
one of the things that we talked about in soup is, a lady that I had met that said, "I just wanna put a piece of you in my agency." And I'm like, "No, you don't," because
Mhm.
peace to me and contentment to me is going to football games on Friday nights and, doing things like that, growing my garden. And, she lived in the city, like, you're not gonna do those things, and that's
Right.
okay. Like, your peace is gonna be something else. But my biggest message to any woman is, do you like, and
Yeah.
don't get stuck in this whole like, oh, it gets on my nerves, this whole boss babe thing. Like, oh, I'm a boss babe, I'm a mom, and I'm doing all these things, and I'm rocking and rolling, I'm doing it in my 15-inch stiletto Louboutins.
Yep.
Like, go you if that's you, but it's okay to be that and have a freaking mental breakdown. And
Mhm.
that's another thing is we don't have to be strong all the time. We're allowed to be weak, and
Yeah.
we're allowed to show that weakness, because what am I doing if I'm trying to be that woman all the time in front of my sons, and to really see that that's their expectation as who they're looking for in a wife. And
Yep.
strength is of course what you need, but in the same time you want to think like, okay, like I want my sons to be like, let me load the dishwasher, let me do the woman things too, because that we need that, and we need
We
that
do.
support. We need
We
it,
do.
especially when we're trying to do all the things.
Well, and I think we need to make sure that we also understand that by being all the things and doing all the things, we're also cutting off other people's opportunity to rise. And
Mhm.
I think that as a leader, we have to be able to say, I don't want to do it. I can't do it. It's not in my best interest. Maybe I'm not good at it. Maybe I want to eat off my left arm to when I'm doing this, right? But the thing is, if we delegate, if we empower other people to do those things that maybe they're really, really good at. Like my husband is really, really great with numbers, loves numbers. I do not. And I
Yeah,
love the
same girl.
fact that people are always like, numbers don't lie. I'm like, for me, they do because they never
No,
match up the same way twice. So I don't know who's
never.
lying here, but I can tell you right now, something's lying. And so,
Yes.
and he's always like, but numbers don't lie. I'm like, what do they do for me? How come my numbers are different from yours? And my bookkeeper and like all these different things. And like I feel like I'm always chasing numbers, right? Like I'm always
Mhm.
chasing things. And but I mean, so I've gotten to where I'm like, that's what you're really good at. And why don't you and I sit down once or twice a month, whatever, and let's talk about our numbers. Let's talk about, but I can't do it every day. It's just it's not something
Mhm.
that I can do every single moment, every single day. And I do a lot more in the business, but at the same point, I don't always want to do the ones in our personal life, right? We need to share that space. Like I don't mind doing the dishes. My husband hates doing the dishes, hates it.
Yep.
I don't mind doing laundry. He hates doing laundry, but I will not clean a bathroom if you pay me. I do not care. I will not clean a bathroom. That is not
Yes.
my gift. And he's
Yes.
Mr. Neatnik in other ways. So, I mean, you find that though, right? But until you verbally say, I hate this, or I don't want to do it, or maybe I just need to hire somebody to help me clean my house and it's worth it, or whatever the conversation may be, until we're honest with ourselves, no one else will rise to come and have that conversation and help. And they won't even find their strengths because we're cutting them off from them being strong in certain areas. So, I want to really challenge everybody who's listening to not only understand ourselves, but to allow other people to rise up in their own space because it gives them satisfaction. It gives them joy. It gives them peace to be able to be good at what they're good at. And that to
Oh,
me
yeah.
is what makes the world turn.
It is, and imagine all the things that we are blessing the world with when we remove our guilt.
Mm.
That's just going back to like, one thing that my husband was like, we're going to do last year is cleaning. We have somebody come clean our house every 2 weeks. And, I felt so guilty about it. And I really started thinking about it. Me paying these people to clean the house is such a blessing because that
Yep.
feeds their family. And the same thing with my staff. And this is one thing that I love about you with your agency too, is because you have set your staff up to know like their strengths compared to your weaknesses. And that's how I am with mine. I jokingly talk about all the time, Kelsey, she's my account manager. I say that my name might be on the building, but Kelsey's the boss. Because
Yep.
if Kelsey's so meticulous, she sets up all my appointments. She does, all the things that I'm so bad at, but that's what she loves.
Yep.
And, I I can't imagine doing running my agency without her because she picks up on everything that can't do. I mean, I
Yep.
could do it if I really wanted to, but I don't want to because I'm bad at it. And that's a huge thing for me is I felt so guilty for a long time because I'm like, during the day, I keep my phone on do not disturb and have a voicemail set up that, if people are calling, they need to call the agency because I was spending so much of my time doing mundane tasks throughout the day.
Yep.
And I was like, you know what? Kelsey's so much better at this. And she'll even tell me, she'll be like, stop sending people insurance cards. Like, stop it. You're making my life worse because you're trying to get your hands into little things that,
Yep.
what I do on a daily. And, when I started to really remove that guilt and started looking at it as, my guilt could be somebody else's blessing, then
Mm.
that was huge for me. And, just little bitty things that you don't think. I mean, even going back to the house cleaners, like, they come once a week, every week, or once every 2 weeks. And, I had actually got in touch with them. My mom, she was using them and she was the same way. My mom, she passed away suddenly in December. And that was a hard thing for her because she's always been very physical. Like catering is a very physical job. And it was so hard for her to really give up doing those housework things
Mhm.
because she's always done them. And, she was one of the ones that had that conversation with me too that I ended up bringing to my therapist. Is she was like, it's okay not to do everything.
Yeah.
And we have to because we're not designed to do every little thing. We are designed to love people, to serve people, and to have relationships with people in your life and develop those to benefit one another. And I truly believe that. I believe that every person in my life is here for a reason, whether it be a client or a friend or, like meeting you and different insurance professionals, because I feel like we can learn so much from
Yes.
everybody around us if
We
we're willing to.
can. But we also have to be open to it. And I think that's a really big
Mhm.
thing is it being really, really open to growth and not just like from a book or a coach or whatever, but just also One of the things I've really had to work on the past few years is being open to suggestions and or
Mhm.
what I feel is criticism. So whenever somebody comes to me and says, or even like a client, sometimes we don't want to send out those surveys, right? Because we're afraid of what they're going to say if they had a bad experience, right? Or if we get a 3-star review or a 4-star review, why did I not get 5? Why did I not get 5 reviews, 5 stars? But by asking those questions and being able to do regular surveys with our team and with our clients, and then opening ourselves up to being able to have those conversations about what people want, how do they want it, we can level up, but we just have to be available for those conversations. And
Mhm.
I think so many times, and I'm even talking about in my marriage and with my children, with my team, if I say, hey, this is da 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 da, and they say, hey, can we talk about that, because I'm not really thrilled with how this is working, the old me would be like, "Rah," I would just be,
Yeah.
I'd be ready to go to town, right? I'd be like, all right, let's go, and I'd be like, you beef up, right? Like you puff up and you're like, all right, let's go. But instead I go, tell me a little bit more about that. And I'm trying really hard, especially in my marriage, to be able to say, okay, well, that makes sense, let me think about that for a little bit, and I will definitely process that. And there's a lot of times that when I step back, I realize that that really has a lot of validity to it, and I
Mhm.
really need to make sure that I spend time and effort and energy on whatever it is that I need to grow in. But we have to make sure we're also open for those conversations, and I think that's a big mindfulness thing, is making sure that when we find ourselves almost like, honestly, like my skin starts to tingle. I don't know how you get whenever you start, like you feel like somebody's like gonna say something or attack you or whatever. Sometimes my skin starts to tingle, and there are certain things that I start hearing myself in my head going, but wait, that you don't understand. And when I do that, I go, stop,
Mhm.
listen, and process, because then it opens me up to be able to say, based on their work style, based on their learning style, based on their goals in their lives, maybe based on their background, their history, I need to take that into consideration. And I need to be more open for this type of a conversation. And I think for me, that's one of the things in the past like 2 years I've really tried very, very, very hard to be really present about. And I think it's the core foundation of being able to be open for growth, is to be
Yeah.
able to take those conversations and grow with them.
Yeah, and, and it's okay, like, that is another huge thing. I have this written down everywhere. One of my psychiatrists told me this years ago. It is okay for your reality to affect your emotions, but it's not okay for your emotions to affect your reality. And we take
I like
everything
that.
so personally. And if somebody comes to you and you've hurt them or you've done something that you didn't think about, it's okay to feel like crap about it. Like, you're allowed, you may even get mad about it, but it's like you said, take a minute and really take in consideration all the things that they're communicating. And that's the biggest thing is in this world today is nobody wants to communicate.
Yeah.
And we really have to communicate, with our clients, with our friends, with our family and our marriage, and to really say, hey, and open to communication. Hey, this is what's happened. You've really hurt my feelings. Maybe I am being a little bit dramatic because I can be, but and you have those conversations, and you can't tell me that 10 out of 10 times, even if those conversations end up in, breaking off a relationship or something, that it wasn't meant to be. Until you figure it out. And it's better to have those conversations and get it out in the open and deal with it. Just the same thing with, like, with a client, for example, whatever it may be. you know I've never had a client be mad at me for telling them the truth. We had a client not long ago that they declined to have a certain coverage on their policy, and we had it in documented and everything, and they were so upset about it. And we finally told them, hey, you're allowed to be mad, bro. You can be mad all day long,
That's
but
good.
here's what we're going to do from now on. We're going to
Yeah.
deal with it as it is, and then we're going to add it on there, and then you'll never have to deal with this again if that's what you want. Be mad about it. I'll be mad with you. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with being having your emotions, showing your emotions in communication, because just like you were saying, like, the communication is growth. And if we're being stagnant in life, we're not living.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's the worst thing that you can do.
And mistakes come from that too. There are going to be
Mhm.
times that we're going to make mistakes. And
Yep.
again, it's learning, right? It's learning, it's growing. I always say that whenever we're not learning anymore, we're done. Like, we're
Yep.
going to be called, and we're done. We're going to transition, be called to heaven, whatever the words are you want to be able to use. But the
Mhm.
reality is that we are constantly supposed to be growing. It is what we're
Mhm.
supposed to be doing. We're not supposed to be this pinnacle of humanity to where we just have everything figured out. I mean, there is nobody, there's nothing out there. People that say that they got it all figured out are lying.
Yeah.
They're lying.
And we can pretend to have it all figured out.
We can. But the
And we
reality
can
is
post
reality is going to come and kick me in the butt one of these days and tell me how much
Yep.
I don't have figured out.
And we can post it on Instagram all day long. Like I said, I could post this on this screen still, and you'll think, wow, she's got her life together. But if I turn this computer around, I'm telling you right now, you're gonna be like, okay, she living like me. And that's the biggest thing. And I think that's the biggest thing with my agency and how I wanted to be, because it's such especially in Alabama, the most people, the own agencies in Alabama are white males. There's not a
Mhm.
lot of minority in here. And, that's the thing, is they're white males with the black slacks. First of all, when I opened my agency, I said, I'm never wearing another pair of slacks in my life. I got rid of every single one of them. I don't know if you're familiar with Queen of Sparkles, but, I'm a
Not.
little girl. You gotta look it up. It's wild.
I will. I'm
This
going to
is the
write that down.
most, this is the most tame outfit that I have worn in a while, because, it is what it is. And when I opened my agency, I had a lot of naysayers that were around, and they're like, she was just a salesperson. She's not going to do it. And at the end of the day, I was like, you know what? I'm going to put who I am. And what, half of my clients can't even tell you what company they're with. They'll tell you they're with Kaleigha at 212 Insurance Group.
Yeah.
And I love that, because I know that I've built those relationships, and that's what my agency was, founded on, is,
Yep.
having those relationships with client and being honest and being who I am. And even if that's the good, the bad, the ugly, even if that's putting a sign on my door that was like, be right back, had to go to therapy, or talking about things. I had a spell on Monday, that just came on like a psychosis spell. And, they come out of nowhere. They're triggered by trauma, different things.
Yep.
And it was not a good day. And I was like, you know what? I can either share this, and, we don't have to share everything on social media, but I was like, people are looking at the highs of life. They're seeing I just went on vacation. They're seeing that I just spoke at Soup Live. They're seeing, that we're doing well and all these things, but they need to see the ugly too. They need to see your
Yeah.
laundry. That they need
Yeah.
to see it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I had somebody once tell me that it's through the trauma that we create the diamonds and the gold,
Mhm.
and that it's through the struggles. And I do feel like, I entered this industry. I was working with my dad with Allstate, but I didn't have a license. Like, I did unlicensed stuff. I did a lot of the back end stuff for him. He wanted to go independent. We went independent. And I just remember thinking I had all my crap together at one point. Like, I remember thinking that, oh, this business thing is so much easier than I thought it was. Of course, I was like 6 months in, so don't sit around and think that I was super successful at that point. I just thought, oh, this isn't that big of a deal. I'm selling policies, I'm slinging policies right and left. We're doing great, we're doing awesome, we're growing, we're da da da. Right. And then there have been multiple phases in my career in the last 21 years. So I've owned my agency for 21 years. And there's been so many times, and honestly, it's like almost 18 months to every 2 years where where most people have a major traumatic experience of some sort. And between having team members and my personal trauma, I mean, got a divorce at one point, got remarried, that ended up in a divorce, ended up remarrying the man that I divorced. I mean, girl, I got it. I got all of it. We've even done podcasts about my trauma, kind of thing. My husband now and I went through a podcast about how the business affected and how blended relationship, kids, um, the industry, his job. He quit his job to come join me in the agency. Then two entrepreneurs. He had never been an entrepreneur before. Just that emotional concept, right? And it was hard. And we did a 2-part podcast on that because I know that other people are working with their spouses, or their spouse may or may not want to be able to come join them in the industry. And people are trying to figure out that maybe they go through a divorce in this situation, maybe they don't get back together, but even then it's like there's so many hard conversations, there's so much love and joy in the journey, but there's so much trauma even as an adult that we take into our souls, that it helps to fuel us forward. But it starts conversations like these, like what you're talking about, that then we can be honest and we can be real and we can
Mhm.
talk about our trauma, so then the next person feels like they're not maybe quite as um off the rails as maybe they think they are.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And then even feel like, even just feel content in knowing that it's okay to be a little out there. It's okay to
Yeah.
have that trauma. It's okay to, to go through that and, live through that because the hardest thing in life is, comparing yourself to other people. Like
Yeah.
that we can't do that because the more that we do that, we're never going to be happy. We're never going to have contentment. And, that's not even comparing yourself to people in the good days, but even comparing yourself. Like I went through a struggle at one time because I was, I knew people who had dealt with trauma like I did in the past and to where they are now compared to where I am. And I felt so guilty about it. Like I almost had imposter syndrome about it
Yeah.
because I was like, I don't deserve this because why did this person not do what they needed to do for themselves. And,
Mhm.
that all comes down to, choosing to be healthy and, mentally healthy
Yep.
and choosing yourself every day. And we have to. And then, just going back to what we said in the beginning, like with women, we have to make sure that we're choosing us because it's so easy
Mhm.
to not. And I can see my life slipping when I'm putting other people in front of myself. And I say that and not in a selfish way. I
Right.
say that as in just like we were going back to earlier, is like filling my own cup because
Yeah.
I can't feed you when I'm not growing my garden.
Yep.
So,
Yep. So true. So true. So true. So whenever people can connect with you and whenever people can get with you about your business, your agency, your conversation. And I love how honest you are because I think that is part of what attracts your clients to you too, right?
mhm,
Is that whenever they get with your organization, whenever they get with you, you share yourself in such a real way that they feel like they know you. I think whenever we have these environments of fakeness, I think we don't show our true self. And when we do that, it's almost like ourselves and our team becomes the call center type environment. Like one of the things that people I think have become so disconnected with is the fact that so many businesses have gone into like call centers where you don't have a personal relationship anymore with your banker, with your, your insurance agent, with your whatever, right? And with that, we take apart the personal relationship. But when you bring yourself authentically to the table, people know who you are. They have a relationship with you. They have a relationship with your team. And I think it makes them feel free to ask those questions, maybe that they would Google otherwise, and maybe get bad advice, right? Like, don't go to WebMD, talk to your doctor. But if you don't know
yeah,
your doctor, you're going to go to WebMD, right?
yep, you're exactly right.
I mean, that's what it is. And I know that in our agency, that honesty and that vulnerability and that approachability is comforting to so many people because they don't know who to trust anymore.
Mhm. Yep, you're exactly right, and, that is a huge thing, and just admitting your faults, admitting when you're wrong, and then
Yeah.
going out of your way you know, to be au authentic, and then not only that, but just to really care. There was a back in the day, I remember there's so many insurance agencies or agents in my area that I do look up to. There's an alpha agent right down the road, and she's such a good supporter. She's wonderful. And, I look at that and I think, I remember back in the 80s and the 90s, and your dad was probably one of these agents, I imagine, whenever there was somebody that had a home loss or like, whatever, like, they would take them, dinner or deliver their check to their house or just go check
Yeah.
on them. And, that became such a, so scarce. And even in Alabama where, people are, your neighbors and you're hospitable and everything. And, that's what I wanted to be. I wanted to be I don't know if you ever saw with Allstate when the Agents of Good thing came out, and that's what
I
I
don't think
wanted to
so.
be. I wanted to
Right.
be an agent, an agent of good, and that's one thing is, I always say is like, I may not have the best rates, I may not have, the companies that you want, but if your house is on fire, I'm gonna come stand with you, and I'm gonna hold your hand, and, I'm gonna, do what I have to do to make sure that you know that I'm not only there to help you file your claim, but I'm actually there and actually care like if it was mine. And my husband, he laughs at me sometimes, like not in a mocking way or whatever, but he was like, sometimes I feel like if our house burned down, you wouldn't feel as bad as if your clients. And I said, I would not. I was like, if a tree hit my rental property today, I would be like, peace out. Tree, peace out, tree, peace out, rental house. But if it happened to one of my clients, it would destroy my heart because I really do care for them and I am empathetic with what they're dealing with. And that is a plus in this industry, but sometimes it is it is hard.
Yeah.
And that's one thing with our agency that I am very proud of is, we may not be a $10 million agency at this point, but our retention is so high because people really do. Like I had a client that she FaceTimed me last night. They have a farm, and she FaceTimed me weekend, just was ranting and raving, and she was showing me her soybeans, and I was showing her the soybeans that are planted on my 7 acres in front of my house. And we were just joking around about that. And she said, that's one thing about you, is she was like, you really do, you care. Like you're not fake care. And you can tell when people are not
Yeah.
genuine. For sure. So that's huge, and if people would really attach onto that and just really, like you said, learn, keep educating yourself, be who you are, be authentic. Don't try to replicate what else somebody else is doing. Like, do the courses, take all these courses that they have that people put out, go to these, conferences, make relationships and learn. But I'm going to tell you this, and you'll remember this from Soup Life, the most profound, and all the speakers were phenomenal, but the most
Mhm.
profound things that I had heard were from Ryan Hanley and David Carruthers and then Andrea Vargas. And it's
Mhm.
because they left their heart on the stage. Like, I couldn't tell you, like, any, like, the automation, the commercial stuff, any of that stuff that they would have normally talked about. But when they went up there and they talked about similar to what I did, like, times are tough. You're going to figure out how to make money. You're going to figure out how to feed your family. But these are the things that you need to be working on right now. And we just have to remember that. We have to put that as the forefront of what we're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, Kaleigha, if people want to reach out to you there in Alabama, and if my little thing just fell over.
Literally, something just fell behind my computer right before
Are
you
you
knocked that down. I'm
serious?
like, what's going on? We got
I
some
don't know, but
spirits
something
going
awesome's going
on.
on. We're just all there together, right? We're in that symbiotic
Yes.
space. I don't
Yes.
know. 8 hours apart. I don't know. Yeah. But if people want to connect with you, if people want to connect with 212 Insurance, if people want to get to know you better, how can they reach out to you to connect?
Facebook. Just look me up on Facebook, and my Facebook is open. I don't Nothing's private on there. You can go in there and find my weird pictures from college. You can go find my baby pictures of Ezra, and you can find all my crazy posts about my, everything. So Facebook, and people are, feel free to message me anytime. That's a huge thing, is I want people to know, like, especially if you're going through having thoughts of suicide and think that, things are rough. I've been in those situations before, and I know what it feels like to be an impending doom. But I want people to know that I will be there. I can be there with you. And I don't mean that in a silly way, like, I'm going to drive all the way across to California to hold your hand, but I'm going to tell you, hey, I get it. And just to have somebody else get it is so meaningful.
It is. It is. And somebody just to walk that path with you and maybe follow
Mhm.
up like 2 weeks later or something like that and just go, hey, how are you doing? I think that's so powerful.
It is, and you never know how much that means to somebody, just
Yeah.
to reach out and just go, "Hey, I was thinking about you."
Hmm.
Just little. If we all just added those little things in life, this world would be so much better. It wouldn't be so
So much better.
divided.
I agree. I agree completely. Well, Kaleigha, you've been amazing as always. And I always love talking to you. So thank you so much for taking the time to be able to share
Yes.
your heart and your business with us today. So I really, really appreciate you.
Yes, thank you for having me on. I'm so glad I got to meet you, and I love your girls I got to meet. They're so good, just such sweet girls, and it's awesome to get to know everybody, and that's a huge thing too, is just hold on to people that are
Yeah.
around you. Hold on to people, love them all, and be kind to everybody. That's all we've got to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love it. I love it. Well, everybody, this has been another amazing episode of the Power Women in Insurance podcast. My name is Teresa Kitchens, your host. Today, we've been amazingly talking in a great conversation with Kaleigha Fitch. And if you are looking for her, make sure you reach on out. 212 Insurance out of Alabama. She is fire. She's amazing. And we are thrilled to be able to have her on. So thank you so much. And everybody, make sure you check us on out on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple iTunes, all those different places. I forget all the places because I mainly do Apple, not for all my podcasts. But everybody, check us out. We're thrilled. Thank you, Kaleigha, for joining us. You have been a
Yes.
blessing.
Thank you.
All right, everybody, I'll see you next week.